you don't have to reach to be Superman. Like David has, I'll talk about you like you're in another room for a second, cover your ears. His head doesn't need to get any bigger, but
size, it's just physically big. I don't have a big ego, but it is hard to find a hat that fits.
Are you being serious right now?
Yeah.
You'd let me interview you as Superman.
Sure.
Ready?
Let's do it, Cronkite.
Superman.
Miss Lane.
Just following the themes of Superman and that idea of hope, I wanted to start with you, David. I'm curious, after working on this project, stepping into that character's mindset, and even seeing the way that, blockbuster films like this can kind of revitalize an industry, how has working on this project given you hope, not only for the film industry and seeing how everything's playing out, but also just the state of the world that we're in, where people kind of need that little bit of piece of glimmer of hope for themselves?
Well, I haven't seen too much of the industry from the inside, especially at this scale. And so I certainly had expectations coming into it, mostly that a film of this size and a property of this importance would feel a little bit like a behemoth machine that didn't have very much room for human input or flexibility or creativity. Those were sort of the horror stories that I had heard. So I was completely shocked and floored to find out that making this movie with James was kind of like making a movie with your friends in the backyard, just with more resources and with, if your friends happen to be the most talented and skilled craftspeople in their field. That felt to me, speaking of like a value in the industry, I think a return to traditional filmmaking values, where obviously we have all these amazing technologies and all of these pressures from the market of, your movie has to make a certain amount its opening weekend and then the box office. And I think about Matt Damon talking about losing DVD sales as a second win for films. But it was amazing with all of that, James in this position of starting a new universe with the DC properties. It was all about the story and the characters and
practical set pieces. He storyboards.
Wow.
Bringing the world to life in that way that felt like, the behind-the-scenes footage you see from films in the 1970s and 80s and 90s, and an eye for the audience, but not in any kind of market or analyst sense, but in a human sense of like, what do people want when they've paid their money and they sit down in that theater for the 2 hours plus. And ultimately what people want is they want to be moved. They want to feel things. They want to see amazing visuals on the screen. And ultimately what I want out of a movie like that is I want to get to the end and think, when the lights come up, like, just let the lights go back down, let's start all over. I want to go on this ride again. Mm-hmm. And I think James has done that with this film. Everything that I have heard is people saying, I can't wait to go and see it again. Yeah. Because the Easter eggs are great, and the twists are great, but even knowing how the story ends, it's the journey that really is the valuable thing. And that's always how I felt about movies, was like, the great films that I want to go back and rewatch again and again and again. It's not for any reason other than I love how I feel during those 2 hours, and I love how I feel coming out of those 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Where you feel almost invincible, especially in a superhero set.
Yeah, and energized and inspired, and ready to keep going.
Put on my own cape.
Yeah.
And Rachel, how about yourself, just stepping into the role of a journalist? I know you did research talking to print journalists to really get that drive that Lois had for truth and for justice. So how did that influence the way that you even view the world today after having that insight?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, as an actor, we're always looking for something to crack a character open for you, something to hang your hat on. And I, that can come from the research. James pointed me towards a number of comics to look at. I was already familiar with the Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder's Superman films. But I was just looking to understand on a deeper level and to try to find something that sparked a way in for me. And that came from speaking to investigative journalists, just understanding what they did all day and what drove them to keep going. You know, I remember talking to one who told me that, of course, like, everybody wants to make an impact on the world around them with their journalism, but if that's the only thing you're doing it for, you're not going to be able to stick it out, because you spend all this time and energy writing a story sometimes and it just doesn't reach the people you hope it does or make the difference you hope. And the opposite can be true too. Sometimes the thing you least expect can make an impact, but that there has to be something else driving you. And I was really drawn to the competitive nature of a number of people I spoke to, the kind of desire to throw themselves into the center of the action, the vices that, you know, that they engage with. And yeah, it was such a fun experience to build an iconic character that was familiar and felt familiar to me, but to find a new way in. James's intentional focus on the importance of journalism and journalistic integrity in this film is potentially more important now than it has been. And one of the joys of stepping into this has been understanding in a deeper way what you all do and the ways in which you put yourselves on the line in pursuit of the truth. And it's been an honor to step into that.
And you also worked with James, right, on really crafting her outfit as well and making it a little bit more of the modern feel versus what we saw with Lois in the past.
Yeah, it's funny. I was worried about it. You know, she's one of the characters who's evolved the most over the lifetime of the comics, and she often represents a fashion-forward version of what the ideal spunky, loud lady would be like at that time. And we talked a lot about what that would look like today, and wanted to both pay homage to other versions of this character and find what felt true for this metropolis. And so that mostly involved flat shoes, and that was also per David's request that I not be 1 centimeter taller.
When you've got a great height difference like ours, you want to
my
use
God. I saw a chiropractor multiple times through the course of filming. And just like, what does it mean to be professional now? You know, we've seen so many different journalists come in here with their own flair. And yeah, we worked with James and Juliana, our costume designer, closely.
No, I love that. I thought it was perfect. I mean, my colleagues who are investigative who are in the newsroom literally dressed just like Lois was in the film. You nailed it perfectly.
That's great to hear.
And David, for you, what was that moment where you were either on set, maybe the first day, maybe a few days into filming, where you were like, I am Superman. Like, I feel fully confident and set, and I have transformed for this period of time into this character?
I think, unfortunately, there wasn't a moment where I felt like I am Superman, I am this guy. And the transformation was maybe less than I expected it to be. As an actor, I generally like to question my first instincts coming into a role to make sure that I'm playing the role and not just playing myself. But I found early on, even from the screen test, although definitely in that first week of shooting, that James's directions for me felt suspiciously like they were pushing me back towards myself, my first instincts. So any fantasy I had of transforming into this character sort of got dashed by James's desire, I think, for me to bring a little more of myself to the role. Which is fun once you get used to the idea, and once you're sure that we're not just doing that because it's the easy route, but it is what is right for the character. And that first week, we luckily did 2 days of Clark and Lois, that big interview scene, and then I had 2 days of pure flying, us in a soundstage on a blue screen, tumbling through the air, flying, getting ripped around. And then the last day of that first week was a little bit of both. It was a little bit, we had a beautiful practical skyscraper facade that they had built, and I was flying in front of it and interacting with some foes and some allies. And it was that day that the exploration that we had done in the week, covering everything from the most personal character traits of Clark to the physicality of the action and the flying, where it all kind of came together, and I felt like, I think I know what journey I'm on.
Oh, wow.
but I still feel just like I was channeling a spirit for 6 months. When people say that you are Superman, I just say, no, I'm not. I'm still David.
I have to say, though, I think it's something that you struggle to articulate, I think, because it's often hard to see ourselves exactly as we are.
Yeah.
But so many of us have experienced the ways in which you don't have to reach to be Superman. Like David has, I'll talk about you like you're in another room for a second, cover your ears. His head doesn't need to get any bigger, but
size, it's just physically big. I don't have a big ego, but it is hard to find a hat that fits.
David has this really singular ability to be both completely present with you and make you feel like you're the only person in the room, and somehow simultaneously have an eye on every single other thing that's happening in the room at the same time. And that makes you feel as a scene partner, but I know that our crew shared the same feeling, like, you know, like you are two people in a room together, but you would trust someone like David to, you know, stop something from falling on you from the ceiling, and you know that instinct would kick in right away. It's really, it's been pretty spectacular to watch.
I love that the super is embedded in you already without
He
you
crosses his
realizing
arms
it.
the same way, all on his own.
Just standing in line at the grocery store.
Yeah, exactly.
Position. And I know that you and Christopher Reeve share the Juilliard connection as well now as a Superman connection. What does it mean to you to carry on that legacy, not only as a Juilliard alum, but also now through this?
I feel so grateful to have gotten to go to Juilliard and to be taught by some of the greatest acting and voice and movement teachers that have ever done it, and to have gone through that with the 17 classmates who I had, and the dozens of other classmates who were in the years above and below, who some of whom I'm still very close with, and all of whom I admire greatly. I was astonished at how directly I felt that my training prepared me for Superman. At the screen test, we did the scene between Lois and Clark, and at the beginning of the day, when we were paired with different actors, we spent several hours working on the scene. And where usually my experience of screen tests have been, you do the scene once or twice and then you're sent away. This was really James, in that sort of old-fashioned kind of way, shooting the scene with you, working it, giving you notes. It felt to me very quickly like
We built a set.
it was rehearsing a play. We were basically rehearsing a play, which I had done quite a lot of at Juilliard. And I felt that I was very prepared to do that. I sort of got excited by doing that rather than feeling I was trying to turn in a performance. I was discovering with James what the performance could be. And then we went over to a different soundstage, and the stunt team ran us through a little stunt evaluation. We did some fight choreography, and then we did some flying. I had done some fight choreography directly at Juilliard, but I had never done any wire work before. Wow. And the wire work turns out to be mostly how well you can control your limbs and how flat you can keep your. So it's a core workout. It's isometric. You know, how stable can you stay?
Thank you, Paolo.
Well, Paolo, yes, but mostly Moni Yakim, who was the main movement teacher at Juilliard, who was one of the founding members of the school, or one of the original teachers at the school, and with whom we spent many hours over the years, lying on a dance floor. I won't fully demonstrate it, but there's a lot of, and one leg up and down and up and down.
You're getting so much more than you thought.
You spend a few hours doing that, and you're thinking to yourself, like, is this translatable? Is this like, well, when am I going to use this really, or is this just changing my spirit in some useful way? And then you are hung from wires, and you have to know where your limbs are and be able to hold them in the right position. And I just thought, Moni, you've prepared me so well for this. So I don't know whether Christopher Reeve felt that direct connection, but I can't imagine he wouldn't have. He also would have trained with Moni back in his day. So I remember very vividly thinking, I'm so grateful that I kept showing up to class every day at Juilliard.